Well, welcome to my session. I know a few of you, but I'm Cara. I work for the Pocahontas County Convention Visitors Bureau in Pocahontas County. And I'm not sure what the makeup of the group is, where you're from, what your objectives are for the weekend. But in Pocahontas County, tourism is the largest industry in the county. So we derive a tremendous benefit from the tourists. So what I'm talking about today is how we grow what we have and leverage that tourist economy. So I know, are all of you farmers or small farmers, big farmers? What's the makeup of the group? Okay. Well, I just have some pictures for show. You know, I grew up on a farm, and when we think about agriculture, this is what we always think about, of course. Kids doing foraging pigs and lambs and cows and whatnot. But it's really changing significantly. And as we go through the session today, I think you're going to hear a lot of really common themes, even with the maple presentation. There are a lot of common themes that thread through all of this, including tourism related. So things are changing. Our farms might not look so much like this anymore. So what is agritourism? It's where agriculture and tourism meet to provide you with an amazing educational experience, whether it be a tour of a farm, a festival, or apple cider making. Farmers, wineries turn their land into a destination and open the doors to the public in order to teach, share, and diversify your revenue. So that's part of it. So I'm assuming since you're at this session, you're a little interested in maybe diversifying your revenue, and it goes a little bit beyond just making or growing products for yourself. So when I grew up, we planted a big garden. And we planted lots of potatoes. How many did that? Some of you do that? Yeah. And when I was doing this preparing the presentation, I got to thinking, gosh, my dad was already in agritourism because he would sell potatoes to our neighbors, and even our relatives over in Virginia would drive all the way over from Stanton to buy potatoes from my dad. And looking back, I think that's sort of agritourism. There's an element to it. So no matter what your level of interest is, there's a place for everybody to be involved in a bit of an agritourism product. So what is the cycle of, and I like to talk about organic growth because what I have learned over the past 40 years of tourism development is it's really, really hard to start from scratch and create a product. We all think, oh, well, we need this. Let's go do it. It's really hard to do that. But if you have some organic base, then that's where you work from. So what does that really look like? So when I was doing this, getting this presentation ready, I got to thinking, gosh, the first thing I remember ever seeing alongside the road for sale to the tourist, to the resident, were ramps. Whenever you went out in Pocahontas County, you drive around, and in the springtime, you'd see ramps for sale. So what does that look like? How have we grown that ramp product into agritourism? Well, of course, selling it, digging them and then selling them. And roadside stands, right? How many of you seen those out on the road? And then we kind of started cultivating what those ramps started to look like. It went from just selling raw ramps to clean raw ramps. I mean, clean was really important. And then you didn't have to do it at home. And then all of a sudden you're having ramp festivals and ramp events. And then you've got ramps showing up on restaurant menus. And next thing you know, you've got ramp salt, right? And then restaurateurs from New York City are buying ramps from West Virginia to sell them in their restaurants. So if you really think about agritourism, this is one of the ways we can actually directly related to tourism? And do people come here specifically for this? And the answer to that is yes, they do. They come here specifically to buy ramps or whatever that product might be. And ultimately, that's what our objective is to grow that visitation. So another example of the cycle of organic growth. Nearly every farm, particularly around here and most places, had a sugar shack. And most of the time they were doing that just for their own consumption, right? We did that for raise our own garden, our own consumption. Sugar shacks were basically the same thing. And we heard a lot about maple syrup from Joe today. And then all of a sudden, our neighboring county created what's known as the Highland Maple Festival. And I grew up going to the Maple Festival. And how did that happen? Well, I'm sure it's because there were tons of sugar shacks over there. And people started asking, can we buy that product? And suddenly, somebody decided to open up their farm for tours, right? And then, suddenly, there's a festival. And now it's been going on, I have this picture of 62nd, but it's probably nearly 70 years now. I can't remember what this year's was. So, it's going from, making maple syrup for ourselves. Next thing you know, you've got sugar camp tours happening. People are coming for that. Then you have a festival. And suddenly maybe you've got a farm and you want to get involved. And this is a picture of Rachel and Adam Taylor, and a lot of you might know them. And they're probably the first actual agritourism producer of maple syrup in Pocahontas County. So they started, I'm going to guess, maybe 10 years ago at this point, producing. And the reason why they started doing this, they had a farm, they had lots of maple trees. Of course, like me, they grew up going to the Maple Festival, so that they saw what could happen. So they started producing syrup. Next thing you know, they've got a value-added product they're selling. We've heard a lot about value-added products and how important that is. That's important because that's where you get your revenue, essentially. That's where you grow that revenue and expand out into a revenue diversification. Then, guided tours. That's a picture of Fort Warwick. And suddenly you have Mountain State Maple Days. And what's really happened with that, and you no matter what kind of agritourism endeavor you're interested in, it might not get as big as Maple Days. You might just sell at the farmer's market, and that's fine too. But what's happened with Mountain State Maple Days, it has created a little microeconomy during that, what we call shoulder season, although it really isn't for us in Pocahontas County. And so why did we get involved, why did the CVB get involved in marketing Maple Days? Adam and Rachel are in between Frost and Dunmore, Frostmore Farms. And they had a couple of years of tours. Next thing you know, Fort Warwick up in Greenbank, which is not very far away, about 10 miles away. So we're going to start offering tours. And of course, I grew up very aware of what maple syrup could do for a community, because I was going over to the Highland Maple Festival every single year. We never missed. That was one of our outings as a family. So when we had two farms producing syrup, I knew we had a product we could market. And then I find out there's actually the Mountain State Maple Days. So it was really organic the way that happened, but you had the buy-in from the producers. And that really matters, because not everything you do is going to actually work when it comes to this kind of marketable event or product. So keep that in mind. Just remember that organic growth, even if it takes a while, makes a big difference. So what does agritourism include? All kinds of things. Pretty much the sky's the limit. It's garden vegetables selling at the farmer's market. It can be honey, berries, and jam. Jams is that value added. beef, flowers, maple syrup, obviously, anything that you produce to resell. And you might be selling to your neighbors, but for most of West Virginia, we have the tourists to sell to as well. And why does that matter? Well, we have a huge tourism economy, and the cultural experience really makes a difference. That's what people are looking for. So don't underestimate what you could produce on your farm to turn it into something that you can sell. So from organic to experiential. So we heard in the maple syrup presentation about experience that, I forget it was Mr. Duff, that he's selling an experience. He really is not selling syrup at all. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that's so true. But the most important thing to remember about agritourism is you do want to sell something if you can, but sometimes it might just be the experience that the visitor is really looking for. So what does that cycle really look like? So product, are you producing something? And do you have the capacity to sell? So what does that look like? Can you actually create a value-added product? Do you want to take that step to create a value-added product? Create an experience. You want to take that next step. Are you going to market? How are you going to market your product? And then what's the bigger economic impact that you could have? And I think, I'll talk a lot, you'll see me refer to Maple Days, but Maple Days makes this full cycle, basically. You might only get to this place where you wholesale a product. You just sell it at a retail place. Maybe that's all you end up doing, and that's fine. You're still becoming part of that wonderful cycle. But sometimes it gets to be a much bigger cycle. Oh, there it is. Oh, too far. Sorry. So first of all, evaluate the opportunity. So what kind of opportunity? Who makes something here? What do you make?
We raise animals and we process them.
Do we need it up in Pocahontas County? Oh, okay. You look familiar. Okay, so you're doing animals, beef, probably pork. Okay. So then you have to evaluate what product you might have to sell, and how are you going to do that? So do you have the agritourism product? Is it something that visitors want? Is it authentic and unique? Might not necessarily be unique, but when you get to the experience part, you might be able to make it unique. But is it authentic? If you're growing it and making it, yes. And I can't say enough the value of the Appalachian authentic product, and we'll talk a lot about that as we move through this, but it has the absolute most important value to it. It truly does. That's what people are looking for. That's what the visitor is looking for. So you want to leverage your culture, your authenticity, and if it is unique. So offer value added. Can you do that? Can you actually produce something? And I know you've been hearing a lot about how you achieve that. But you do have to evaluate whether or not it's something you want to do. Do you want to make that leap and do the value added? Are you offering something that's free, or is there a fee? Or obviously if you're selling a product, there's a cost involved. So what is that value and price threshold? You've got to weigh what your cost and revenue is going to be. And what's the guest perceived value? We talked about a gallon of black walnut syrup costing $300 or $400. Well, that value of that is perceived by the guest to be really expensive. But if you can figure out how to get it to a price point that you can sell to the visitor, that's what you got to figure out. And brand and take homes. You've got to, You got to have a brand, and that can be a lot of things. It can be the visible brand. It can be you. You know, you as the farmer can be the brand. And you've got to be able to give somebody something to take home. People want to take something home, especially if they've had a great experience with you. And, well, and are you making money? You know, that's really important. Marketability as well. Is it marketable? So how you're going to market will vary. It just depends on if you're part of an event, if you're just selling wholesale, if you're retailing. How you're marketing will make a difference. So organic versus created. Again, as I said earlier, it's really, you can create something, and particularly if you're making a product that is authentic and has a value to the visitor, you can sell that. But in terms of, say, maple berries, that took some organic growing. We had to get to the place where we had capacity to do that. And opportunity for economic impact. So it does make a difference. If you could, if you know that you're going to make an economic impact to yourself, to your family, or even to your community and your business. So capacity to sell, there's a lot of different ways you can participate in the agritourism industry. Wholesale, you can sell your products directly to a restaurant, for instance. Or you can retail it at a store. You can sell direct to consumer, farmer's market perhaps. Festivals and events. So do you have that capacity? That does require some manpower, it requires some work. It requires you to actually package your product in a specific way as well, and of course safety, et cetera, all come into play there. Value added. I just got a few pictures up here of Maple Days participants. But value added, that's where you start to see that incremental growth in your revenue. So obviously with maple syrup, there's a very clear pathway to a value-added product.
Wait, my shoes are really dirty.
So experience. You've heard that word a few times today, I'm sure. But what does it really look like? Well, it looks like a lot of things. And I've got a bunch of words up here. It's smell, touch, taste. It's how you make a person feel. Is it authentic? Are they learning something? What is that experience that you can provide? One of the things that I will tell you, and I really do believe this, that a real important part of the experience is you. If you're producing a product, a value-added product, you have a huge impact on the experience, particularly if you're inviting people to your farm. You're the product in a lot of ways, so don't underestimate what you bring to the table. Because I've learned that visitors might come to an area, they might come to an event for something specific. But they come back because of the people they met. So if you want return customers, you've got to make that human connection. One of the things I love about Mountain State Maple Days in Pocahontas County specifically is that all the 5 different farms that you go to, number one, offer a different experience. When you go to Frostmore Farms, you learn the more modern way of making maple syrup. They have the reverse osmosis machine, etc. You go to Fort Warwick Farms. Bob's got this amazing sugar shack, and he boils his syrup the old-fashioned way, and he's a storyteller. So he totally immerses the visitor into that overall experience. And if they can't buy something when they leave there, they're going to be crushed by the time it's over with. You go over to Starry Night Farms, for instance, and they have scraped together a product. They have built their own reverse osmosis machine. And he's an educator. And so Rick really goes into the technical details about how you do this on a shoestring. Then you come out to Mountain Center, and what you already know about the experience here. You learn, and so it's about the people, it's about the experience. So don't underestimate how important that role is, because ultimately that's what's going to spread your brand around, and that's what's going to sell your product. So remember that it's taste, smell, feel, touch, sound, sight, all those things. And don't get upset if you think your farm's not really up to par. Some of the people that around our county who produce maple syrup, for instance, they want to participate in some way, but they don't want people coming to the farm. And that does happen. I can feel that. I get it. I understand. You want everything to look pristine and beautiful. And that's okay. Find your little niche. How can you participate without having to invite people to your farm? Well, what that looks like with Mountain State Maple Days here is you can provide your syrup to a local restaurant who's going to provide a menu item during Maple Days on those 2 days. And your name is listed on the promotional material. Even though you might not be inviting people to your camp, you're still spreading your brand. And you may even have some of your product for sale other places as well. So again, the experience is about creating a connection with the authentic experience. You want to immerse the visitor into the visit. You can do that through, of course, events, tours, education. So ultimately it's people, place, and then a memory. Because you want people to go out and tell people about their experience, right? So what does that look like? How do you engineer your experience? Show and tell, engage your guest, your visitor, and immerse them. Like I was saying, that each one of the Maple Days tours in Pocahontas County is different. And if you're a storyteller, share your stories. People love to hear it. Honestly, people don't know how things are made today. Our visitor up at the Snowshoe has no idea how products get to the grocery store, So it's important to immerse them and tell those stories. That's what connects them to the place and creates that connection that they need. You want to make sure it's an enrichment experience. You want to engage the visitor, of course, retails, restaurants. And here's the most important piece. Visitors are more likely to spend money when they perceive value, learn something, and create a memory. So create that memory for them. So product, story, educational value, emotional connection, selling a product to take home. That's your ultimate goal, right? I learned that many, many years ago. You can create all the experience you want. And people, once they're immersed and they're totally engaged into that experience, if they don't get a chance to leave with something to take home, you've missed your opportunity. And you don't want to do that. Marketing. So how do you tap into that economic return? We've talked a little bit about that, but it is about branding. Do you have a producers association? You want to create an enrichment experience? One of the best models, I really do believe, is give free tours, but make sure you're selling something. Sell that value-added product for the return. Partner marketing. Are you working with other people? And if you're selling directly to a retail store, how are they marketing your product? Make sure you have a logo that stands out. So cross promotions, social channels, press releases, media outreach, etc., etc. And don't forget how important your DMO is, and that's what the CVB is, the Destination Marketing Organization. Don't forget how important we are. How many of you know your CVB? Good. It is important because the CVB is where you can get basically free promotion. And in our county, what we do, we do a lot of work with Maple Days, of course, but we will list anybody who sells something. If you have an experiential tour of any kind, we will promote that for you. So the economics of agritourism, what does that really look like? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Pocahontas County, but this can probably be directly related to most of your areas, wherever you're coming from. But why does it matter in Pocahontas County? Well, as I said, agritourism is where you blend your agricultural product with the tourism economy, which means you've got to have a visitor, right? And in Pocahontas County, we have a very strong visitor economy. So you can see where the changes have been. So in 2007-08, we collected about $1.6 million in hotel motel tax. And then in 21-22, last fiscal year, 2.6 million. So it's getting close to doubling in that short period of time. So, and it was up 18% over this year to this year. So that's a pretty dramatic. So if you have a visitor economy and you're not marketing to the visitor, then you're missing out. Seasonal growth by hotel motel tax. And again, I think this will probably be fairly similar to a lot of the counties in the surrounding areas. But for Pocahontas County, one of the reasons why Maple Days really, sunk in, and that's because we have a huge winter base. And I know most people think that February and March is a shoulder season. And it is in a lot of ways. And you might even say that it is for Pocahontas County, with the exception of the winter ski business. The snow sports business is really big in our county. So we knew that we had access to all those visitors coming here. And how do we tap into that? Well, Maple Days provided that unique opportunity to do that. But our goal is to actually continue to grow the economy, while also, if we assume that the winter economy is at its capacity, we want to grow the spring, summer, fall. So how do we do that? And you can see that we're starting to make the shift. Yeah, and I think the one I see the most use on, well, nowadays it's getting to be more and more, but I like the honey producers for the honey. They use a lot of it. And I can't say that I've actually seen it on a lot of maple.
I've seen it on a couple, but not really. I've actually had a couple of maple syrup producers complain to me that they don't like the look of it.
Oh, I love it. It's so
I think it
simple
looks
and
fine,
it's so
yeah.
recognizable, and it's an added touch to your existing brand. And it just really said, like I said, it says to the visitor, hey, this is actually produced in the state of West Virginia. It's authentic, it's guaranteed.
So yeah, that's just something that you would market alongside or whatever, especially for the ag.
Yeah, and it's for that value added, that retail sell. That's what it's for.
It's for marketing the whole state
Right,
as
the
a
whole state.
place that produces agricultural goods that are worth eating,
Right, yeah, this is.
Come here, we have the best honey or whatever it is.
Any question?
Go ahead. Well, I was just gonna ask if you could say again what the CVB is.
Convention and Visitors Bureau. So what we are is the marketing
Same
organization.
question.
Marketing organization for county, town, even region in some
Can you,
cases.
what was the full form of that?
Pardon me?
What is the full form of that, the CVB?
Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Oh, conventional visitor bureau?
Convention.
Oh, okay.
And they're very common nowadays, and most convention and visitors bureaus are funded through a lodging tax, hotel motel tax. That's how we're
So
funded.
does Pocahontas County have one, or would it be like Vermont?
Yeah, almost every county in the state has one,
Okay.
and they're very common everywhere.
Do you know the contact info for Greenbrier, or would it be more specific to White Sulphur and Lewisburg?
No, it's the Greenbrier Valley
Greenbrier.
CVB.
Okay.
They're right in Lewisburg, in the old Garrett's building, right on 60.
Down there across, yeah.
Across from the Food and Friends.
A really
Oh,
nice, really
okay.
nice building.
Yeah,
Oh, you know what? I've actually been there. Now
Yeah.
I say that.
So every county has their own.
well, most counties, almost all the counties do, yes. There might be one or two counties that don't have one, but
Is it federally funded?
nope, they're all, almost all of them are funded on a local level.
Okay. What specifically they like, kind of work to certify the?
No, well, the state Department of Agriculture has that program where they certify your product for West Virginia grown. What the Convention and Visitors Bureau does is market the county, and that can look like a lot of different things. And generally speaking, for every county, it's a little different. But for us, you know, we're for Pocahontas County, we have been very involved with the Mountain State Maple Days. You know, so we're very aware of the agritourism benefits that come in Pocahontas County.
Do you see anything changing from Department of Commerce Division of Tourism in helping any of this sort of destination experiential sort of thing? I mean, they've been focused on whitewater rafting and skiing for so many years. You know, they spent tens of millions of dollars. River Gorge Bridge, Babcock Gristmill. I mean, it's the same recycled things, which are all wonderful, but none of it trickles down to any type of things that we're talking about at this room. Do you see that changing?
I think it'll change over time, yes. I will say that, you know, it's been a hurdle to get them on board to market Mountain State Maple Days. I hate to say that, but it has been a real hurdle, and I don't understand why.
It's skiing and whitewater. I mean, that's the language they speak.
Yeah, but we
Is
keep
there
working
funding
on
in
that
that?
message with
Is
them.
there money?
And I know that
No, I
Department
mean,
of
like, is the ski
Agriculture
resort paying
has
for
as
that?
well, and Future Generations and the Producers Association. They've been, you know, they continue to keep
Doesn't work the other way
that
around.
communication line open and trying to foster that
Yeah.
relationship. But I do think that from a marketing standpoint, the Department of Tourism is missing the boat in not promoting Mountain State Maple Days and other opportunities too. But I like to use that example because it is a full-fledged tourism product right there, ready to go. All they can do is market it. So I don't know what the answer to that is.
The Department of Agriculture has changed a lot in the last decade. They're just, I mean, they're phenomenal at promoting agritourism in a way they weren't 10 years ago. And part of that's because there's more to promote. I mean, there's
Right,
more to
sure.
promote. So
But the budgets between ag and tourism
right, yeah.
is a little more
They have one
robust
person who does tourism in the Department of Ag, right? Yeah.
compared to an entire division
Yeah.
in commerce. So it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever we think about how, I mean, we hear it time and time again about how important the authentic experience is. So I hope they hear, I hope they see, and I hope eventually they come around to help start marketing and promoting these, what I would consider true ground level economic community development efforts that are really, you know, it sustains our communities like nothing else can. I mean, it truly, there's a lot of value there. So hopefully that's changing. We keep preaching the message.
Preaching a good word.
That's right.
Sustainable agriculture. Come here, please.
Other questions for us?
So in terms of like experience and like selling experience, you know, what ranges does that cover? I think you just mentioned, you know, like whitewater rafting, hiking, you know, walks in the woods. I know there was some ideas a while back that me and my one of my buddies talked about for cancer patients to have a place for them to be able to come and go and be able to get into nature and, you know, be able to experience that. So what kind of like, because it's not necessarily about the agricultural aspect of it. Does that
More about nature.
More about the nature,
I
more
mean-
about the experience itself. Does that kind
Yeah.
of go into that same category? But
I mean, I think it does. I think when I think about experience, you know, it can really be a whole host of different things for sure. You know, honestly, I think about forest bathing. just throwing out an idea here. You know, that's connecting the nature and the forest, and to some degree, it could even be agricultural related.
You could go
but-
on any place like Asheville and just search on Airbnb
Yeah.
experiences, and that's sort of your definition of agritourism. That's the way I see it, anyway. Anything you can think to do with your property, especially if you're feeding your land and you're being regenerative in some way, whether it's farming or just bringing attention to an issue, I think that's agritourism. I don't think it has to be as specific as growing a ramp and feeding a visitor. I think it could be anything. We
It
have
could be a lot
goats,
of
it could be
things.
going for a goat hike with
But
a
I
goat,
think-
you know?
I think whenever you experience, some degree has that element of education involved, but when you get into the recreational experience, that, the line's a little bit blurred there, but I do think that an educational component does have a key role in creating an experience. And I'll use this example, and I'm probably going to go over my time perhaps, but I'll use this example of recreation and an experience. So I coordinate the tourism club at our high school. I've been doing it a dozen years and just fun to. But the thing that kids have to do, they got to participate. And at the end of the year, they get to go whitewater rafting. So we pay for that. My office pays for it. So every year off we go to whitewater raft. So it's been several years ago. Off to whitewater raft we go. I think it was in 2019 in the spring. And, we're always, you got this vision of what your whitewater rafting experience is going to be, right? It's going to be beautiful weather, it's going to be warm, the water's going to be great, it's going to be fun. We get to the high school that morning and it's cold, it's 50 degrees, and it's raining. And, of course, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. It's going to be cold, miserable. The water was actually up. So off we go. We get on the school bus and down to river we go. We pull into where we're gonna get on the boats, and the river is literally up and muddy. And it's rainy and it is cold. So that weather didn't change for a year and there. We go down, we all break into our groups, we get put in front of this boat, we get our life jackets and everything on, and here comes the tour guide. And what a difference he made. I mean, I'm telling you about how awful it was, but in truth, it really wasn't. I'm just using that to demonstrate how the experience is the person too, because he turned that trip around. We didn't care if it was cold. We didn't care if it was raining. We didn't care that the river was muddy. He was super. He was so much fun, and he made that experience for us. So I think experience comes in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't have to be educational, but there has to be an element of connection, whether it's with nature or whether it's with a person or even food, the connection to that food. So it can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard, I don't know if it's in a practice somewhere around here in the Appalachian region. I've heard one of my sister lives in Portugal, and she said that they were in one rehabilitation center. It's for the medication and the food, locally grown food, and then after medicinal herb if you have any issue. Like lots of the cancer patients go there just for the medication and have those kind of medicinal plan and all, and it's a very good experience in the nature, as well as I think I don't know if it's related to the agritourism or not, but I have heard that, and I was kind of thinking if we can find those kind of spots in Appalachian region or not. I don't know. I've never heard
We have
about
medicine trail.
The Mountain Medicine Trail is something we're piloting here.
Oh.
But it's really interesting to me that it's just something we're starting to think about, is this therapeutic, therapeutic tourism, but ecotourism. I mean, I don't know if you're making that distinction between ecotourism and agritourism, but it is all of that. I mean, it's the lines blur when you get out
I
and
think
just,
it has to be,
Yeah.
they end up being the same thing when you boil it
Right.
down to.
Exactly, it really
As long as
is.
it's
Right.
nourishing the community, it's nourishing,
Exactly.
it's restorative,
Yeah.
I think the experience is the part that, you're talking about value added, that's the actual product they go home with, but the experience is the memory and what they tell their friends,
And how
why
they
they come back.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I will mention too, you're talking about Airbnb experiences. I do think that's not a bad idea. I mean, whenever you want to learn about how you create really great experiences, it doesn't have to be anything, I mean, it can be something really simple.
They've closed it. We can,
What?
Oh, they don't do it anymore?
we've tried.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
There was
just
a place
crushed to
that-
hear that.
but
We've tried twice. First time
Yeah.
they didn't support this location yet, and then next time they're like, we're just covered up with applications. We're just.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah,
Airbnb.
yeah, forget about it.
So
They don't allow it?
for a year, maybe like 4 years ago, it was based on location for some
Yeah,
reason.
we're
and
not a
now
big enough market for them to
Yeah.
support an
Oh,
experience.
Now it was
That's
just like,
And now they have too many.
they have too
Oh,
many
wow,
applications.
interesting.
Huh.
Put ours. Keep trying, forest farming.
One other thing that I think, to blur the lines even more, I mean, Brian and I are talking, and one of the ways that he makes his operation work in the forest is layering different operations on top of each other, right? So
Stacking functions.
he's got understory botanicals underneath where he's tapping his sycamore and maple trees, right? Because they're not up at the same time, right? If you're just I'm thinking about the example you gave of a therapeutic place to go hike and commune with nature if you have cancer or something like that, you're probably going to stay there for more than a day. So having local produce at the dinner table while the person's there is adding another layer. So what may have been a wellness tourism thing or an ecotourism thing now has an agritourism layer built into it, right? And then you don't have to do it all yourself either, because you've probably got a neighbor who's got something that they're selling at the farmer's market too. And then you're really expanding what the experience is and what it is an experience of, because now it's an experience of the community, right?
That's ideally cool.
Yeah.
To me, like that's what I want, not just for the person who's touring, who's coming to visit, but for the community itself to gain as much benefit as myself or the place or the person themselves. Even the person who may be sick who can come out and experience that and get, hey, this is from, all local foods, it's all organic, it's all, prepared this way and healthy, and we can all eat it together. And it's not just the sick person, it's their families too that are able to get some of that healing as well.
And you should promote that.
Right.
I mean-
It is,
Yeah.
that's kind of some of the dreams that I have, like that I see that I think that could bring such great value, especially maybe even for these older communities too. That now you're gonna have more infrastructure put into your trail system to allow for, older people with wheelchairs or stuff, but I think there's such a disconnect for them to be able to get out into nature that when you reach a certain age, it's just shove you in a home and forget about it.
Right, that barriers.
And
You
I
want to
think
reduce that barrier.
yeah, and breaking that down and allowing that, so more tourism, not just growing in what we have, but building things that can be.
I have the terrible